Evelyn story, 69-year-old retired librarian. Did you ever think that the quietest revolution of your life would start with the sound of a minivan pulling into your driveway on a rainy Tuesday afternoon? That's exactly how it began for me. I had just settled into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of chamomile tea and a new novel, one I'd been saving for months, when I heard the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. I looked out the window and there was my daughter Laura's silver minivan, doors already sliding open, my 3 grandchildren spilling out like marbles from a jar. Laura was right behind them, wrestling with backpacks, a cooler, and what looked like an overnight bag. I set my book down, heart sinking a little, and opened the front door. "Hey, Mom," Laura called, waving as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "We're here. The kids have a teacher-in-service day tomorrow, and Mark's company sent him on a last-minute business trip to Denver. I've got back-to-back client meetings all week, so I figured you wouldn't mind watching them for a few days." "A few days?" She said it so casually, like she was asking me to water her plants while she ran to the store. The kids, Ethan, 10, Mia, 8, and little Sophie, 5, rushed past me into the house, already shouting about snacks and TV, and who gets the good controller for the video game system I'd bought them last Christmas. Laura followed, dropping bags in the hallway, kissing my cheek as she breezed by. "I brought groceries," she said, holding up the cooler. "And their schoolwork is in the blue folder. They have a project due Friday, but it's mostly done. You're a lifesaver, Mom." And just like that, my quiet week, my carefully planned week of reading, gardening, and finally signing up for that watercolor class I'd been eyeing, vanished. I stood there in the doorway, watching my peaceful home transform into a whirlwind of noise and chaos, and something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice on a pond that's been holding steady for too long. I closed the door softly and walked into the kitchen, where Laura was already unloading juice boxes into my fridge. "Laura," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "Did you ask me if this was okay?" She paused, a carton of milk in her hand, and looked at me with that little laugh, the one that says, "Oh, Mom, don't be silly." Of course I knew you'd be fine with it. You love having the kids. And honestly, Mom, what else do you have going on? You're retired. Your schedule's wide open. There it was. That sentence I'd heard in 100 different forms over the years. You're retired. You have time. You don't work. You're alone anyway. As if my days weren't full. As if solitude wasn't something I had earned, fought for, and finally learned to cherish after decades of raising children, working full-time at the library, caring for my parents in their final years, and keeping everyone else's lives running smoothly. As if my life, at 69, was just empty space waiting to be filled by whoever needed it most. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, really looked, and saw how effortlessly she assumed my answer would always be yes. Because it always had been. I remembered the summer Ethan was born. Laura had postpartum depression, and I took 3 months off work, unpaid, to help her. I moved into their spare room, did laundry, cooked meals, rocked him at 3 a.m. so she could sleep. I remembered when Mia started kindergarten and got sick every other week. I was the one who dropped everything to pick her up, sit with her through fevers, read her stories until she fell asleep. I remembered last year when Mark lost his job for 4 months and they were scared of falling behind on the mortgage. I cashed in part of my savings to help them stay afloat. And every time, I did it willingly. Gladly. Because that's what mothers do. That's what grandmothers do. But somewhere along the way, willingness became expectation. And expectation became entitlement. I took a breath. "Laura," I said again, firmer this time. "I need you to listen to me." She turned, finally sensing something in my tone. The kids were already arguing over the TV remote in the living room. This week, I have plans. I'm signing up for an art class tomorrow. I have a garden that needs tending. I have books I want to read. And more than anything, I have a routine, a quiet, peaceful routine, that I've worked hard to create. And I'm not available to watch the kids for several days without any notice. Her face changed. First surprise, then confusion, then something close to hurt. Mom, are you serious? You're saying no? I'm saying I wish you had asked me first. And right now, the answer is no. She stared at me for a long moment. But, what am I supposed to do? Mark's already on his flight. I have meetings I can't miss. We don't have anyone else. That's not my emergency to solve, sweetheart. It's yours. The words came out before I could soften them. But I didn't take them back. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic ones, just the quiet kind that come when someone realizes the rules they've lived by their whole life might have just changed. You're really not going to help me, she whispered. I've helped you your entire life, I said gently. But help isn't the same as being taken for granted. Sound like you. Asterisk. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I went to the community center and signed up for the watercolor class. The instructor, a kind woman named Helen, welcomed me warmly. You'll love it, she said. So many of us start later in life. It's never too late to begin something for yourself. That first class, I painted a simple vase of daisies. My hands shook. The colors ran together. It was terrible. But it was mine. A week passed. Then two. Laura didn't call. The kids didn't FaceTime me with their usual chatter. The silence hurt more than I expected. But something else happened too. I painted every day. I read 3 books in a row without interruption. I reorganized my garden and planted tulip bulbs for spring. I joined a walking group with other retired women. I started sleeping better than I had in years. And slowly, the guilt began to fade. One afternoon, about 3 weeks later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Laura standing there alone, holding a small potted plant, a peace lily. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. We sat in the living room. The same room that had been full of children's voices not long ago. Now it was just us. She placed the plant on the coffee table. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About what you said. About taking you for granted. I waited. You were right, she continued. I never asked. I just assumed. Because you always said yes. And I told myself that meant you wanted to. That it made you happy to help. She looked down at her hands. But I see now that I never actually checked if it did. I just needed you to. And that wasn't fair. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. I reached for her hand. Thank you for saying that. We sat in silence for a moment. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. Or have the kids lose you. But I understand now that love isn't just taking. It's asking. It's respecting. I nodded. I don't want to lose you either. But I needed to start respecting myself too. She smiled through her tears. Mark and I talked. We are going to hire a proper sitter for emergencies. And from now on, if we want the kids to stay with you, we'll ask, really ask. And we'll take no for an answer if that's what you need. That means everything to me. A month later, Laura called. Mom? Would you like to have the kids for a weekend next month? No pressure, if you have plans, it's totally fine. We can figure something else out. I looked at my calendar. The watercolor class was having an exhibit, but it was on Saturday morning. I'd love to, I said. How about Friday night through Sunday afternoon? She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. That would be perfect. When the kids came that weekend, everything felt different. They still ran through the house with joy. They still asked for cookies and Minecraft. But now, they also asked if they were being too loud. They thanked me for dinner without being reminded. And when Sunday came, Laura arrived early, with a bottle of wine and take-out dinner for just the two of us after the kids were asleep. We sat on the porch and talked. Really talked. About her work stress. About my paintings. About life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not just as grandma. Not just as the helper. But as Evelyn. A woman with her own life, her own needs, her own worth. That rainy Tuesday, when the minivan pulled up unannounced, didn't end my relationship with my daughter or grandchildren. It changed it. For the better. Because sometimes, the bravest thing a mother can do isn't saying yes. It's saying no. And trusting that real love, the kind worth having, can survive it. Now, when I sit in my quiet living room with my tea and my book, or stand at my easel mixing colors, I feel something I never knew I was missing. Peace. The kind that comes not from avoiding conflict, but from finally, at 69 years old, choosing myself without apology. And if you're listening to this and feeling that same crack in the ice, that moment where you realize you deserve to be asked, not just taken from, I want you to know. It's okay to say no. It doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. If this story touched you, give it a like so we can see how many of us are learning to choose ourselves. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and have you ever had to set a boundary that changed everything? And if you'd like to support more stories like this, there's a link below. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Check the screen for 2 more stories I think you'll love, click one and keep listening. With love. Evelyn.